Hi, everybody. Welcome to this online event. I see that there's 16 people, I think, here. So I'm going to get started. Thank you, everybody, for coming and connecting to my first online event. Kia ora koutou katoa. I'm Natalia Albert, and I am the Opportunities Party candidate for Wellington Central. So just a bit of a disclaimer. The screen I have doesn't allow me to see who's logged in. And I've got an incredible team of volunteers helping me manage your comments and your questions. I want to send a very special shout out to any friends and family of mine that are in this event. I can't see your names or your faces, unfortunately, but I feel your love and I'm really grateful that you're here. And for all the new people that I don't know that have connected, it is lovely to meet you. I am very excited for this conversation and just chat about the future of New Zealand. And hopefully doing it online makes it a bit more accessible for people, also for people that live outside of Wellington Central that want to connect and get to know some of the candidates and some of the conversations that we're having. So hopefully we can do a bit more of these. Accessibility is a huge value of mine, and so hopefully this helps. So I see we have 20 people watching, which is great. Welcome to the new people that have connected. So the way this conversation is going to happen is I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, my professional background, why I joined TOP, and then a couple of themes that really interest me about the future of New Zealand and things that I constantly see on the media and on social media and just having conversations with people, the themes that have come up for me. And then we'll open it up for questions and hopefully I can give you insightful answers. I will do my absolute best. A couple of things to consider while we're talking about these things and I'm going through these themes. There are certain values that I want to just make an assumption that will be carried through all of these themes. One of them is equity and equality. So if I talk about infrastructure, if I talk about technology, if I talk about the changing demography of New Zealand, equality and equity within these topics is just a sustained value of mine that I'm always considering at all times, which is why I don't place it in its individual section. The other theme that's really, really important for me in the same kind of vein of equity is accessibility of information. So making sure that anything we talk about technology or infrastructure, we're considering the accessibility for our disabled community or people with learning disabilities or people that speak English as a second language. These are very strong values of mine and I carry them through any topic that I'm covering, whether it be climate change or housing or the tax system. So I just wanted to share a little bit about that so you understand why it's not a separate thing. And I'm really happy to answer questions about that. Those are topics that are close to my heart and I care a lot about. So who am I? I am Natalia Albert. I was born in Mexico City in the early 80s to a single mother who was diplomat for the Mexican government. So I lived in Vancouver for 6 years and Chicago for 2. And that's why I speak English the way I do. And that's why I feel very comfortable navigating English-speaking countries and Western cultures. But I am very Mexican in my identity. Spanish is my first language, but I am also a New Zealand citizen. And I also care deeply about my citizenship as a New Zealander. I have been in New Zealand since 2011. I live in Wellington with my husband, Mike, and my 3 dogs. We decided not to have any children. And I have been a public servant for 12 years in Wellington and also studying part-time in the evenings for 10 years since I moved here. I did an undergrad, a postgrad certificate, and just finished my master's in political science, focused on the role of institutions in governing diverse populations, as well as very involved in the gender space in Wellington as an advocate. I did a lot of social entrepreneurship in my earlier years in Wellington, and I produced the first TEDx Woman event in Wellington, and I did that for 4 years, which allowed me to connect with that community here. I'm just getting a text saying, pause when you can. Sure. I will pause now. Just getting some assistance. That's Finn, my campaign manager. I'm back. I hope everyone can still see me. I can see that 27 people are watching, so kia ora koutou to the people that have just arrived. Thank you for being here. Like I said at the beginning, I can't see anyone's faces or anyone's names, but my team have that information and they'll give it to me after the event, and I will be answering your questions. But to all my friends and family that connected, thank you so much for joining. I love you for your support, and for everyone that's new and doesn't know me, it's lovely to meet you, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. So I was just talking about where I'm from and what I do. And so that advocacy work that I did in the gender space and all of my academic background in political science, specializing in the role of the government, especially in governing a growing diverse population, took me down a path with my job in the public service where I did a lot of work in the past couple of 3 years around social cohesion and the policies around social cohesion. And I was very involved with the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the 15th of March attacks and that community, and did a lot of engagement. And I feel very strongly about those topics, which is what took me to TOP. I contacted the Opportunities Party late last year to volunteer. And lo and behold, 2 months later, here I am as your candidate for Wellington Central, and I'm very excited. The reason I joined TOP and not another party is because I am a very strong believer that what we need are small parties that can work across the spectrum with the bigger parties to bring people together. The strongest value that I have is uniting different groups and working through our differences to coexist together in peace. And I think we need that more than ever at the moment. I think polarization is a real risk to countries like New Zealand, and we have really important and difficult topics to work through to make sure that the diversification of this country is being done in the most respectful, mana-enhancing way for all groups, new migrants, Māori as tangata whenua, the Crown, which is the institution we have, and TOP is that refreshing, new, fresh voice in Parliament that I want to be a part of supporting. So that's a little bit about me. I'm going to take a 2-second break to see if there are any questions about that before I share some of the themes that I see about the future in New Zealand and where I think we need to pay a bit more attention and ask a bit more questions to government and politicians for accountability and transparency moving forward. I will just check with my team to see if there are any questions about that. No? No. Are they? Great. I just got a question. What's the best thing about Wellington Central? I love Wellington Central, and I have a couple of responses. The first is the hills. I am an avid cyclist, and the hills have really helped me to kind of stay motivated, and I love climbing them on my bicycle, which I know is really weird. And the second favorite thing is Makara mountain biking park, which I spend a lot of time with my husband, and the waterfront. It's just the jewel of the crown. I absolutely love the waterfront. I find it quite magnificent. Those are my favorite things about Wellington Central. Not the wind or the winter. Great. So another question. What do you think is the best way to overcome the cancel culture we are seeing day to day? That's a really good question. And I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the third theme that I see for the future of New Zealand. So I'll get back to that question in a minute. So the three kind of key themes that I've identified that I'm most interested in, and I'm not saying these are comprehensive or the only themes that are important about the future of New Zealand. I'm just saying they're the ones that I have been paying a bit more attention to. And the themes, I've kind of named them into people, which by people, I mean the demography of New Zealand, the type of populations we have, the size of the population, the different groups, the ages, the locations of the population and how they're going to move, and the aging population. So the type of people that will live in New Zealand over the next 3 to 5 years. The second theme I identified that I'm really interested in is places. And by places, I mean the infrastructure, right? Our cities, the type of cities, how we need to think about our urban, bigger cities, Wellington, Christchurch, and Auckland, as well as the regions, and how we're going to connect all of these centers and all of these people with each other and with the healthcare system and the education system and the transport system. So infrastructure is a huge theme, and I'm calling it places. And then the third theme I've identified is technology. I think we've all heard way too much about ChatGPT since November that it got made public, and it's ensued a massive debate in the world. And I'm really interested about the trends and the considerations we need to have as government and politicians in terms of regulating, not regulating, the differences between AI and machine learning and big data, and what role do agencies like Stats NZ, for example, and the Ministry for Business Innovation and Employment that hold massive amounts of data, and what implications that's going to have with the technology and artificial intelligence and those topics that we are hearing more and more about. So those are the three themes. So very quickly, people and demography is probably the area that I'm most interested in from someone that's just been very immersed in understanding the statistics around the diversification of the population of New Zealand. So according to the census in 2018, we are 78% Pākehā, 16% Maori, 7% Pacific. And then you go into the Mala group, which is the Middle Eastern, Latin American, and Asian demographics. And we are about 1.7%. And these are rough statistics, and they've changed considerably since then. We've just done the census in 2023, and we'll find out in early 2024 what the new population looks like. We've also grown way more as a population than we'd projected at this point. So there's more of us now than we thought we're going to be. So size of population is really important. But the consideration moving forward that's going to shift is not so much the size of the population or the size of the cities. It's going to be the type of people that live in these cities. So how old are we in the next 5 to 10 years? So the aging population, there's two themes and people that I just want to highlight. One is there's going to be more older people and less people my age are having children. Like I shared in my intro, I decided to not have children for a variety of reasons. And it turns out that there's a lot of us of my generation that were born in the 80s that right now aren't having children. And we can't really see the effects of that until the next 10 years. And so what does that mean? Are we going to have the right services for an aging population that's larger? And we're going to have a smaller workforce. And so what are we going to do about that? What are the policies required for those shifts? Professor Paul Spoonley is someone that I follow very closely that has been doing a lot of work in this space for many, many years, talking about social cohesion and the changing demographic of New Zealand. And I find that really interesting. And I don't know if politicians talk enough about that, a lot because we have the 3-year cycle. It's very day to day and it's very short-sighted. But I feel as a candidate for top, big opportunity to be able to think longer term about these things and make smarter decisions about the implications of the policies we do today. What does that mean for the aging population in 5 years and the lack of a workforce because people aren't having any children? So that's the first thing that I think is really interesting about the future in New Zealand. I'll do a quick pause there to see if anyone has any questions about that specifically that I didn't cover. Will you be attending the future public meetings in Christchurch? I don't think so. I probably not because I'm trying to focus in Wellington Central, but you can connect with Raf Manji, our party leader down there, and all his events. He's an incredible, obviously, party leader and politician, which is why I'm following him, but you can check him out there. Cool. Yeah. How are you going to improve the electorate? Great question, Merlin. And thank you for being here. It's lovely to see you. So some of the things that I'm really focused about in Wellington Central are, you could probably summarize them in two key themes. One is public transport. I think it's been heavily under invested in for years, and we're paying a very steep price right now. I had a couple of conversations with counselors at the Greater Wellington Regional Council who run Metlink. And I also had meetings with some executives at Kiwi Rail who manage the ferries and the rails, and Metlink manages the buses and the trains. And it's a colossal thing that's happened where we've waited way too long to invest in this infrastructure. And now we have this problem where the ferries don't really work and we won't get better ones until 2026. The rail needs a lot of investing, and therefore Metlink is trying to do as much as possible with the trains and the buses. We also have a lack of workforce for the buses. We need a lot of drivers that we don't have, and it's been pretty complicated. So I'm very interested in supporting the Wellington City Council with some very dedicated leadership to make sure that it doesn't take too long to make these improvements. It won't be quick, but I will be very focused to make sure that people that need to get to work into the CBD get into work and then get back home on whatever public transport they need. And the second topic that I'm very interested in about the electorate is that the housing cost of, not only the cost of housing and the cost of living, but making sure that the right housing is in the right places, that we're thinking really strategically about where we are housing families and couples and older people, and that it makes sense for everybody, and that we're being quite strategic, especially with this issue about the aging population that I mentioned. That is going to be a radical shift in how we live for the next 10 years. And so I want to make sure that Wellington Central is very well prepared for those things, that the type of housing we have in Wellington Central is adequate and appropriate, and it serves everybody. And it's not this haphazard reactive thing that I feel we're kind of getting into at the moment, especially in certain areas around Dixon and Willis and Courtney Place. So those are probably my main topics at the moment, front of mind. Great question, Merlin. Barbara Hay. What do you think are the best ways to get exposure for TOP in this election? That's a great question. So coming to these events is a really good way. I have been putting a lot of time and effort into my social media accounts. And so sharing my content, liking my pages, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. I'm doing quite a lot of work there every day to make sure that I'm sharing information that's relevant to people on a day-to-day basis. Very simple videos talking about accessibility and infrastructure and what we think about news stories that are coming out every day around single parents and welfare. So liking my social media is really important. Talking to friends and family to vote, very important. And just talking about this, going to the events, engaging with our social media pages, mine and the party's pages. That's a really big win for us because we're such a small party and we're not that funded. Social media is where we get more bang for buck. So definitely engage in all of those and comment and like and share and talk to your friends. And meet me in person. Come to all my events. We're going to start to promote heaps of events where you can meet me at the pub and at Vic Uni and Kelburn and all over town. I'm going to be at the markets and I'm going to be running heaps of door knocking stuff. So log into that barcode that just came up or text to my team on the chat and make sure that you know where the page is, where the information is going to be. But social media is where all the information is going to be at. And if you don't have social media and you need access to this information in any other format, email, we can call you. I'm happy to talk to you over the phone. I really want this to be an inclusive campaign and make sure that as many people as possible have access to all this information. So if you or people you know need the information in any other format, I'm very happy to make sure that you get it in the format you need to participate with us this election year. Is Young Top active in Wellington? It is now. That's a great question, Barbara. I am meeting every Wednesday at 11 a.m. at Vic Uni Kelburn campus with the Young Top team. We're hanging out there for an hour and a half and meeting students. Jim, one of our key volunteers for Young Top today, sent me and my campaign manager an email with heaps of events that we're going to do at Vic Uni with Young Top. We're going to do a policy Q&A in trimester 2. We're going to be doing some content. We're going to be doing some meet and greets at the pub at Hunter Lounge. Absolutely going to activate Young Top. These are great questions. I'm sorry I can't see your faces. John Price. Hi, John Price. What is your favorite thing about TOP? Oh, that's a great question. Well, right now, my team. the chief of staff, the strategy advisor, social media advisor, Anna Christopher Will, Finn, my campaign manager. They're incredible people, and I am absolutely in love with them. So that's one of my favorite things. But more in terms of politics, my favorite thing about TOP is that I think it's the only political party that can work across the spectrum and unite people. I feel like we need politics that unite different groups like air to breathe. And I don't think the Greens or ACT can do that. And I don't think National and Labour can do that. I hand in heart believe that the only party that can unite people this election is the Opportunities Party. Hi, Sean. Thank you for your question. Where can we see more of your policy platform? So all the Opportunities Party's policies are on the Opportunities Party website. We have the teal card, the tax switch policy, affordable housing policy, and climate opportunities policy. So you can check them all out there. I also have a blog page where I'm doing weekly opinion pieces with between 300 and 500 words, really simple, reacting to stories of the week and giving my personal perspective of how we can digest politics this election year without dividing people, without polarizing, with a really balanced perspective, which if you're more interested in kind of like my personal views on this as a political geek that I am, and someone that's really passionate about uniting people, especially people with different views. So just to clarify, when I say unity, I don't mean this all holding hands, singing Kumbaya. That's not me either. It's about the contradictions, the opposing views. How do we work with them and through them? Because agreeing can't be the political outcome that we're after. So if you want to check more about that, connect to my blog page and also to all my social media channels, which is where I'll be talking more about those types of policies. And TOP will be revealing more policies throughout the process and the timeline before October, the election. Thanks for your question. Hi, Shaquille from Young Top. Lovely to see you here. I hope I get to meet you one day. So Shaquille's asking, how will you bridge the gap and get rid of the illusion that politics is not for young people? Such a good question. Oh my God. I think just encouraging people. I mean, my message around different groups coexisting very much applies to young and old. And you see that with the boomers and the Gen Xers. You see that with the old queer and the young queer community. You see that with conservatives and progressives. And I want to make sure that the conservative, older generation know that we're not going anywhere. Right. And also talking a lot to young people. I'm using TikTok really actively every day, putting up a minute or two videos, talking to them directly through that platform, going by activating also Young Top. But it's just a big part of my values. Like, I feel this campaign around people being able to vote at 16 is really important. They already pay taxes. We already carry them with a lot of burden. They can buy guns, they can drive. So if we've made those decisions already, it feels really obvious and responsible to just allow them to vote and just keep talking to people that disagree. I think just leaning into those conversations and learning to listen and learning to influence people that aren't so open-minded is going to be a huge requisite for politicians moving forward. Great questions. Todd Wakefield. Hi, Todd. What does TOP think about getting behind the recent Green Party tax policy? That sounds very familiar. Winks. What do we think about getting behind that policy? I mean, we are very open. Like I said, TOP is the only party that will work across the spectrum, right? So that means Greens, that means Labour, that means National, and that means ACT. We are very progressive. So our policies will align more with the Greens and Nationals policies. However, we feel that it's very important to still be able to work with National and ACT to, if they get into government, be able to prioritize those policies. But I think in essence, our policies are quite similar. I think the difference, very high level, that I would say between the Greens and us is that we probably think about the pace a bit different. So how fast we do things and how much of things we do. And we're very keen in working with businesses and not dividing more than anything. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. It was a bit long-winded. Zoe, I'm so happy you're here. Hey Nat, how can we mobilize younger individuals to actually engage in politics and get out and vote, whether it is a lack of motivation, a lack of education, or feeling intimidated? It seems that there are a lot of people that don't want to engage. I absolutely agree, Zoe. And I think this is a symptom of the type of politics that we've been doing over the past 10 years. I genuinely feel that we need voices like mine and like the candidates of the Opportunities Party that understands how to communicate the trade-offs. And I feel like young people have lost a bit of faith because everything feels very absolute and very cynical. And it's just not the way politics needs to be. So I feel like being politicians with a balanced perspective that can listen to both sides of the argument without making a moral judgment and just agreeing that we need to work through it, I think we'll reach more young people. But I definitely want to use social media. I want to use the channels and the tools that young people are using. I want to have access and give access to youth with disabilities and youth that come from migrant backgrounds that might not speak English as a second language, and activate those communities. Because at the moment, it's also the type of people that have access to democracy and politics are very privileged, right? You need to have a certain level of education. You need to have a certain level of context. You need to be able to absorb everything quickly. You need to be able to have a computer, the digital divide, all those things. So I feel very strongly that the more accessible we make politics and democracy, the more we'll activate the young voters as well. So I'm just testing time. Great, more questions. Excellent. I don't need to go anywhere, by the way. So whenever the questions stop, we will stop. But if not, we will keep going. Maggie, thank you for your question, Maggie. How do you think we can deepen the political conversation and awareness beyond the superficial stuff? That's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things I'll say. One, we need to be more patient with people. I think we've lost our capacity to talk to people that disagree with us. And I think we've lost our capacity to understand that agreeing, like I said before, shouldn't be the political outcome. And I'm going to say that again, because I think this is a really important value that we've lost. When we're talking about politics with people, having them agree with you and you agree with them should not be the outcome. The outcome should be listening and should be understanding. When you think about politics at its simplest form is ideas, right? Any idea is the politics of a person. So if we don't develop this patience and this tolerance, I think we're going to keep polarizing people, and we're going to keep pushing people to not want to engage with any topic because it just becomes too hard. And I really think that we need to sit there with our conservative mother-in-law or our radically progressive nephew and hear them and be like, that's really interesting. I don't necessarily agree, but tell me more, and not get really worked up about it. Like, I think we're confused. And so, yeah, don't seek to agree with them, seek to listen. And I know that sounds very kumbaya-ish, but just think about it really clinically. Like, we just need people to vote. And in order to do that, we just need to listen to them and encourage them to go, regardless of their views. I hope that answered your question. Before I answer this question by Alice, who I don't know if it's Alice, my friend, Ali, if it is, hi. I didn't see that question. Can you put it back up, please? Very quickly, just a shout out that we also need donations. I'll talk a little bit about that before I wrap up. Where do you see the future of Wellington Central with more people being forced out further into the regions for housing and rental affordability? This is a really good question, Ellie, and this is exactly what I'm focused on. Let me just read the second question and I'll answer that in a minute. How that impacts the capacity for people to come together as a community, socially and organizing, with more time and energy spent commuting and working. Absolutely, really important considerations. So the answer to these questions isn't simple, and I think that's really important to recognize. Urbanization and the growth of cities is just a natural evolution of cities like Wellington, right? So people having to go to the regions and having to spread out into the fringes of cities isn't exclusive to Wellington, and it's not exclusive to New Zealand. I come from Mexico City. I lived in Chicago. Dense cities and growing populations is just something that every city, small and big, struggle with. What's happening right now, I think, is that we're like the rubber's hitting the road with Wellington. And because infrastructure and public transport has been underfunded, everything seems really drastic and really dramatic. When in reality, it's just a natural progression of populations growing. There's more people in Wellington now that they're used to, and we just need more space. One of the things I do think we need to think about, which I agree with the Greens on actually, is the densification of Wellington Central. So being able to build up more than build out. Building out creates this problem that Alice has highlighted, which is it just separates people and it's harder to get into the city. Puts a lot of pressure on public transport and it puts a lot of pressure on people because they end up spending too much time commuting. So the answer to that is densification. I've been talking a lot to industry, to the construction sector, to a couple of companies of developers and architects and engineers to ask them, what's the limitation in densifying Wellington and what are the challenges? And there's a lot of issues with regulation and red tape and central government with local government. So I'm really interested to dive into that and make sure we make it as effective as possible and as sustainable so people can live in the hub and this can be a vibrant city in 5 years and not this desert, which I think is an option at the point as we're going now. I hope I answered that, Alice. Marianne Gilbert, thank you for your question and for being here. How will you counter the belief of a vote for top being a wasted vote? I love this question. Seems some people like the policies, but don't think the party will get in and so won't vote top. Self-fulfilling prophecy. It's an absolute self-fulfilling prophecy and it's a great question. And I'm going to answer it in 2 parts. One, I don't believe that there's such a thing as a wasted vote. This notion that we've developed in New Zealand since MMP started, I think is the wrong way of thinking about democracy, about voting, and about elections. I think people should vote based on their values and on their beliefs, regardless of where the party will sit in government or not. Because what ends up happening is that then we'll just only vote Greens, National Labour, and ACT for perpetuity. It's just the wrong logic for elections. So I really want to encourage and talk really vocally about people voting with their conscience, for their beliefs, regardless of whether they're in politics or not. Because I think that if everybody that agreed with top policies voted, we'd be in government already. And just to close that first point, if you do want to vote strategically, like a lot of people say, then vote for top. Don't vote for the status quo parties. And the second thing I'd say to that is that Raf Manji is going to win an island. And if he wins an island, we will get into parliament. And there'll be at least one other MP with top in parliament. And that is how ACT started and how the Greens started. So one, tell people to stop thinking that shit about voting strategically and voting for top is a wasted vote, because it's the wrong way to look at this. And it's a guaranteed way to keep the status quo. So if you want to keep the parties and status quo, keep voting how you're voting and keep not voting for top. But if you want difference and you want change and you want balance and you want unity, vote for us. I hope that answered your question. What's your take on the Make It 16 campaign? I love it. Like I said, I think the more people we can get voting that want to vote, that are already paying taxes, by all means, they absolutely need to vote. I mean, we're fighting a wave of apathy in politics. And if we have this really activated, motivated, organized group of young people that want to vote, that are already paying taxes and are already entitled to all of these really high-risk responsibilities like owning a gun and driving, they absolutely need to vote. So I saw them last weekend at Festival for the Future, and I encourage everyone to sign the petition, go to their website, support them. We need the people that want to vote. Well, another question comes in. Please donate. We need money. Go to my page on the top website. And if it's $1, $1 is great. I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown. $5 allows me to boost posts on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. $12 allows me to run an ad campaign on social media. $100 allows me to print flyers for markets and for door knocking. $200 allows me for more flyers. $500 allows me for hoardings and boards. So any amount of money that you can donate to me as a new candidate in a small party, I would be eternally grateful. So please go to my website and donate whatever you can. Cool. How can we ensure better representation for minority groups in Parliament? I love this question. As a migrant Mexican woman in New Zealand, I live this. It's my religion. Representation is very important. It is very complicated. Quotas are not always the option, but without representation, then everything sucks. So we absolutely need representation with its warts and all, with its problems. Like, it's not a silver bullet, and it's not the only thing we have to do, but we absolutely need representation. So I feel like participating and me having stepped up, and that's very important. But I feel I'm also standing on the shoulders of a lot of people. Georgina Bayer, Materia Ture, Golries from the Greens, Marilyn Waring from National in the 70s. There's just been a wave of people that have stepped up to speak up about these groups in Parliament, and they've opened the path for us. And I will keep doing that and keep bringing people along. I'm making a huge push to make sure that my team of volunteers is as diverse as possible, that underrepresented groups feel safe participating in politics, that feel safe and valued when working with parties. So I want to make sure that everything I do and everything I'm touching and thinking about is based on the fact that I want as many people from underrepresented groups to come and feel safe. So I'm doing a really deliberate push for those groups to be volunteers for my team. So if you know any people of color, men or women, disabled men or women, trans men or women, please send them my way. I want to make time for them. I want them in my team. I want them volunteering. I want them involved. I just saw a question come up, but then it left very quickly. I think it was from Shaquille. Yeah, Natalia will be the goat in Parliament. Oh, yay. Thank you. That's lovely. I appreciate that. Hopefully we will be there. Thoughts on ChatGPT? Okay, this is great. I love this question. So I have dyslexia and I can't read and write easily. So I've been using software to help me write and read and edit for 30 years. I've seen the progress of these softwares throughout my life, and they are really clunky, really expensive, and generally bad. And I can say that ChatGPT has made so many things so much more accessible to me. And my type of learning disability isn't as bad as other people. So in terms of accessibility, I think ChatGPT is a game changer. Does it have its risks? Hard out. Absolutely. Is it perfect? God, no. Am I horrified about some of the potential? Absolutely. But I heard a podcast the other day about it that someone said something that I want to share and I think is really important to consider. If good people don't use ChatGPT and artificial intelligence and machine learning, only bad people will use it, and it will absolutely have an impact. So I really want to encourage people to use ChatGPT if you haven't, and to think about it as an accessibility tool, as a tutor, as a mentor, as a friend. It's just really effective to support in editing and spelling and translating and organizing information, especially if you have a learning disability or you have any sort of difficulty with English. ChatGPT is a great solution. So I want to encourage good people to use it, because if not, just bad people will, and then we're all going to be screwed. What made you choose top over, say, the Greens? Yeah, that's a great question. Because of my really strong belief about balance and unity between different groups, I would never align myself with parties that are at such edges of the political spectrum. So it has nothing to do with the values of the Greens or the values of ACT. I can align with their values and their policies, but because of where they're placed and how they pull the narrative to either side of the political spectrum, and I fundamentally disagree with that, I think it's creating a lot of problems, I would never align myself with them. What's your favorite top policy? I think the teal card. The teal card's awesome. The teal card is a policy for young people where we're going to fund health and public transport until they're 30 with a $5,000 boost when they turn 18. And the healthcare that's covered is GP visits, dental care, eyes, and mental health, which I am a huge advocate for because I also have PTSD and I know how important it is to be able to have an early diagnosis and the right kind of access for mental health services. So the teal card for sure is my highlight about TOP. It's also a policy that only TOP has. No other party has a targeted policy for young people. So I feel very strongly about that. So go check it out on the website. Alice, do you have suggestions, drawing from your research, how the culture of parliament should change to encourage diversity in candidates? I do. That's a really good question. And I actually have like a really specific answer to that. Given my research through my master's about the role of government in serving diverse populations, one really simple thing that I'm going to fight very hard for, not only within parliament, but in government, is the review of the internal complaint process. So at the moment, if you feel discriminated against, or you don't feel safe, or you're outnumbered by a certain type of demographic that works in parliament, the ways you can raise a complaint are very problematic. Not only are they ineffective, but by using the internal complaint process, it guarantees you will get in trouble, victimized, and forced to leave. And I feel very strongly about that policy. So I'm going to be pushing very hard Peter Hughes from the Public Service Commission and Parliamentary Services to improve their internal complaint process. So the burden of proof is not on the victim, but on the institution. And I have a lot of evidence and research to back this up, and I am ready to take that fight on. And I think that's going to make a massive difference to how people feel working in Parliament. La Uta, I hope I pronounced that properly. What separates TOP from the Greens? They have incredibly similar policies on UBI, progressive policies, etc. How does a vote on TOP differ to a vote on Green? Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm really happy you made it. And I will go back to what I have said, which is the Greens cannot work across the political spectrum, right? So that's a really important point. We can, and we will work with National Enact to bring those progressive policies and make sure that they are considered. And that flexibility to be in the cross benches, holding big parties accountable for whatever they're not doing, is going to be a game changer in politics in this country. And the only party that can do that is TOP. Greens can't do that. So the type of policies we have doesn't necessarily matter as much as how we're going to do the policies and how we're going to do the politics within Parliament. And the position TOP has taken is not only a good and a sound position, but it's a critical position to improve certain things in this country. We're going to have one more question. How can we support you from outside of Wellington? Oh, thank you so much. Like all of my social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you're on TikTok, that is where I'm communicating the most. I need people to comment on my videos, like them, share them. It's where I'm getting more bang for buck at the moment. I need my name to be recognized. So talk about me, tell people about me. Send them my email, tell them I'm happy to chat to anybody. Yeah, word of mouth is huge in social media channels. So there's the QR code so you can follow me on all my channels and just engage with me as much as you can. I really want to hear from as many people as possible. Cool. So we've been going for 45 minutes. There's 28 people, I think, online, which I'm incredibly humbled and grateful that you guys took the time of your evening to hear me. Please connect with me through my social media channels, introduce yourself, chat to me. I really want to connect with people. I want people to get to know me. I want to be put to test, right? Like just throw it at me. Yeah, I care a lot about this and I care a lot about everybody. So is that it? This is the first time I've done this. So I'm just going to look at my team to see if we just say goodbye. I'm just going to say goodbye. Ka kite ana, everybody. Stay safe. Thank you.